Today, we're diving into a story that just completely flips the script on what it means to be too late. It's proof that your timeline, well, it's entirely your own. We're talking about a guy who, at an age when most people are hanging it up, flat out refused to quit. This is the story of how a man turned his first Social Security check into a global empire after he turned 60. And trust me, this isn't just about fried chicken. It's a masterclass in resilience. Let's get into it.
I mean, just picture this for a second. You're 62 years old, everything you've built is gone, basically overnight. Your only income is a government check for $105. The entire world is screaming at you, it's over, time to retire. But in that moment, when he was completely at ground zero, Harland Sanders made a choice, a defiant one. He decided he wasn't a victim. He was just getting started.
So here's how we're going to break down this incredible journey. First, we'll look at that defiant pivot at age 62. Then we'll dig into the decades of hardship that made him who he was. We'll define what we're calling the Colonel Sanders rule and see how he turned that philosophy into a system. Then we'll watch his rise from retiree to a global icon. And finally, we'll talk about what all this means for you.
Okay, so let's zoom in on that critical moment. This wasn't just a business move made out of pure desperation. And believe me, he was desperate. This was a conscious, almost rebellious pivot. It was a complete refusal to buy into the story that society tells us about age, about when you're supposed to stop. Think about this reframing of what an asset is. The man had no money, no powerful friends, no Ivy League degree. What he did have was this unshakable, almost religious faith in his product, that secret recipe of 11 herbs and spices. And he had pure, stubborn grit. He knew, somehow, that those intangible things were worth more than any loan a bank could give him.
So here's the billion-dollar question, right? You've got no cash. How in the world do you build an empire? He couldn't build new restaurants, couldn't run a splashy ad campaign. His solution? It was so simple it was audacious. He decided he'd just drive around the country and convince other restaurant owners to sell his chicken for him. This idea, franchising with basically zero capital, that was the spark that lit the whole fire. But, to really understand how a man could get rejected 1,000 times and keep going, you have to look at the life that prepared him for it. That insane level of resilience, that wasn't something he just decided to have at 62. It was a muscle he'd been building his entire life, whether he wanted to or not.
This timeline just says it all, doesn't it? It starts when he's just 6 years old. His father dies suddenly and he has to learn to cook for his little brother and sister while his mom works. Cooking wasn't a passion project, it was survival, and it taught him about quality and self-reliance from day one. Then the next few decades are just a whirlwind of failed jobs: farmhand, railroad fireman, ferryboat operator, you name it. And then finally, after he built a successful business, the final gut punch at age 62, a brand new interstate bypasses his restaurant and his customers just disappear.
So you see, when his business went under, it wasn't his first rodeo with failure. Not even close. His life had been a crucible, a brutal training ground that taught him there's no such thing as a sure thing. It forced him to figure out what his real assets were, his skill with a pressure fryer and a bone-deep refusal to be beaten. And this brings us to the real heart of the story. Because what he did next wasn't just luck. Sanders was operating with a core philosophy, a clear set of principles that guided every single move he made. We're calling it the Colonel Sanders rule. And here it is. It's the systematic belief that if your vision for what you're selling is absolute, and your persistence in getting it out there is also absolute, then your age is just a number. It's totally irrelevant. It means failure isn't the end of the road. It's just a data point in a much bigger system.
He broke this rule down into 3 practical pillars. First, an obsession with making the product perfect. Second, a mandate of extreme frugality, mostly because he had to. And third, what we'll call the Relentless Pitch Protocol. Let's dig into each of these.
See how these all fit together? His obsession with product perfection meant that the recipe was sacred, non-negotiable. Then there's the Frugality Mandate, which was just brilliant. By only charging 5 cents a chicken, he made it a super low-risk, easy yes for restaurant owners. And finally, the Relentless Pitch. This was a mental game changer. He didn't just tolerate rejection, he expected it. He basically adopted the mindset of a marathon runner who knows the race is going to be long and painful.
Now, a philosophy is great, but it's useless until you turn it into a routine, a daily system. And that's exactly what Sanders did. He translated his rule into concrete, everyday actions that let him execute his plan all by himself.
I mean, just look at this. It shows how completely backwards his approach was compared to, well, everyone. The textbook says you get venture capital, hire a sales team, and launch a big ad campaign. Sanders? He used his Social Security check as seed money. He was the entire sales team. And his ad campaign? It was him in your kitchen cooking his chicken, letting the product do all the talking.
And this was a finely tuned system. The Road Warrior protocol meant he literally lived out of his car, sleeping in the back with his pressure cooker and bags of seasoning in the truck. That's what made the high-volume pitch possible. And you can't forget the uniform and persona discipline. That famous white suit wasn't just a quirky outfit, it was a branding tool, designed to build trust, make him instantly recognizable, and turn his age into a symbol of wisdom and authenticity. Before he got his first real yes, Harland Sanders was told no over 1,000 times. Just let that number sink in. Over 1,000 doors slammed in his face. 1,000 people tasting his life's work and saying, nah, not for me. This is the ultimate stress test for any system, for any person. Could his beliefs survive that? The answer, obviously, was yes.
And that unstoppable persistence, well, it leads us here, to the triumph, because the results of his relentless system were, frankly, unbelievable.
This timeline is just staggering. Look at how fast everything happened after everyone else would have quit. He's broke at 62. He really starts franchising at 65. Not even 10 years later, at 74, he sells the company for what would be almost $19 million today. And by 85, he's not just rich, he's one of the most famous people on the entire planet.
And here's the thing that really cements his legacy. Yeah, the chicken is great, but his real impact on the business world was proving a totally new model. He basically invented the idea of a low-cost, high-volume franchise system, built around one perfect product and an unforgettable personal brand. He wrote the playbook an entire industry still follows.
So that brings us to the end. And this is where we turn the story back around to you. The lesson of Colonel Sanders isn't just some old story. It's a mandate. It's a way to think about our own goals, no matter how old we are or what we're trying to do.
This is step 1 of the Colonel's rule. You can't be persistent about something you don't believe in. So, what is your non-negotiable? What's the one thing you believe in so much that you'd be willing to hear no 1,000 times for it? That's your starting point.
And here's step 2. Don't run from rejection. Expect it. Embrace it. See it as part of the process. You have to adopt your own relentless pitch protocol. Let that deep conviction in your product be the fuel for your endurance, because you are going to need it to get through all those no's. So let's wrap it up. Colonel Sanders built a global empire on one simple, powerful truth. Age is irrelevant when your conviction is absolute. We saw how his rule transformed a personal disaster into a blueprint for success. It's this timeless example that the only assets that really, truly matter are your belief in what you're doing and your commitment to quality. Because in the end, the only rule that matters is this one: the clock only starts when you choose to begin.